What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back once again to talk some free agency for the Detroit Lions. Day 2 of the legal tampering period is today, and we have some more Detroit Lions news. On top of that, we're also going to be diving into some of the contract updates that we have so far. So let's get it started. Welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here, and we are back with the first video of the day. I assume this will not be the last video of the day because there probably will be more moves, and on top of that, I also have another video that I am working on in the background for that man, Cameron Sutton, the Detroit Lions cornerback signing. Okay, I did a lot of that work last night, and I'm hoping that that video comes out today, but if enough news breaks, then it may not. But with that being said, in today's video, we're going to talk about the re-signing that the Detroit Lions made because they made another one, and then also we're going to take a look at some of the contract situation updates. We don't have them all. I wanted to wait a little bit for this because they kind of slowly leak out, but with some of the news that has recently happened with the restructuring and those types of things, I'm just going to give you guys everything that I know as of right now. So let's actually start right there and update some of the Lions salary cap situation as much as we know. And then we'll talk about what we don't know, so where the Lions may be at in terms of how much salary cap space they actually have. So let's start right there. I'm going to make myself a little bit smaller. We're just going to do it all right here. And the first thing that we're going to start with is that cornerback, Cameron Sutton. Now, on this website, this is Spotrac or Spotrac. I never know how to say it. I really do. Someone told me how to say it one time. I still don't know. But this is Cameron Sutton's contract according to them. And we need to take a look at how the Lions set this thing up. So this is not something that is new in terms of the Detroit Lions having a very low cap hit initially with their signings and then backloading it, but also now throwing void years onto these contracts is something that we've seen. Now, I think one thing that's important to keep in mind as well is, you know, most deals this is going to take place, but we do know that after 2024, there's a lot of players that really aren't under contract for the Lions, unless it's maybe draft picks from this past year, things like that. So there's going to be a lot of changes in terms of how the Lions reset new contracts, the quarterback situation, even if that is an extension with Jared Goff, how do you set up his contract? Where you're kind of getting some of those void years a lot of times in like 2025. The biggest thing, though, is that a lot of guys aren't under contract. So there's going to be so much flexibility where the new signings that the Lions make, the new contract extensions at that time, the Lions are going to potentially be able to backload them again so you feel less of the void years, if that makes sense. On top of that, you can always re-sign these players, and then the void year just kind of goes into the deal. With that being said, though, take a look at what they did here with Cameron Sutton. So his cap hit for the season is only $3.28 million. That's the important thing to keep in mind because, as we know, that's what's important in terms of how much cap space that you have available. How did the Lions do this? Because we were reported that he was given a 3-year, $33 million deal. And according to Spotrac, that is the case. 3 years, $33 million. Here's what the Lions did. The signing bonus was $10.9 million. So the Detroit Lions broke it up, and it always does this. It breaks up through the years of the guy's contract. But to make the signing bonus lower for each season, what the Lions did is they threw 2 void years on the contract. Now, void years accelerate. So if there is no extension, that's going to accelerate immediately, my understanding, after the 2025 season. So as you can see down here, 2.18. What is that number? That is 10.9, the signing bonus, divided by the years that he's under contract. So while technically after 2025 he's not under contract, you can make it look like that in the books. So technically he's under contract for 5 years, even though he won't be playing for us after 3 seasons, even if the Lions don't change his contract or anything like that. What the Lions did is they spread it out to lower that signing bonus each season to feel it a little bit less, and they threw 2 void years on the deal. Now, if the Lions, didn't extend him or anything like that after 2025 and he was on the roster, then that would accelerate to $4.36 million, which is just adding the 2 together. And that's also something that happens when you cut a player. So if you cut a player after 1 season, you'd have to add these 4 years together, and that makes up your dead cap. So point being, or at least some of your dead cap. So then you look at how the Lions set up beyond that. 2024, his cap hit's going to jump to $12.68 million. 2025, his cap hit is $12.68 million as well. So the Lions did backload a little bit. You can see his base salary is $10.5 million. Now, there's really no out within his contract right now after the first 2 seasons, so he's kind of locked into this year and next year. However, after 2024, there is a potential out. You can see his dead cap lowers to $6.54 million, which is again 2.18 plus 2.18 plus 2.18. That lowers, okay, to that. So there is an out, which that would be all of your dead cap if you cut him heading into that 2025 season. If you cut him, your dead cap would only be $6.54 million. So according to, if you go over here to over the cap salary cap simulator, hopefully this thing is not off the screen. It's not. Just for example, You go to 2025, you find Cam Sutton, here he is. If you cut him, you see that you would have $6.54 million in dead cap like we just looked at, with over $6 million in savings. But for the first 2 years, there's really not that kind of flexibility to get out of his contract. So that's how the Lions use voidable years to lower his cap it. As you can see down here, it says unrestricted free agent 2026. That is true, but these 2 years are just void years that they throw on Cam Sutton's contract. So only $3.28 million cap it for this year. That's extremely low. Now, continuing on, the next player that we have is someone that the Detroit Lions, I guess it was announced that the Lions are restructuring this deal, and that is to open up more cap space. When you restructure a deal, it's usually to open up cap space for that season, and that's exactly what the Lions did here. So, taking a look at Tracy Walker, this is a guy that they could do this with. I wasn't sure if they would, because number one, there was an out within his contract, so now there's less of that out. There was a very clear out after this season in Tracy Walker's contract. Now there's less of that. Also, on top of that, Tracy Walker didn't have the biggest base salary, so there wasn't the most potential to open up cap space, but he was a guy that was definitely possible. We highlighted in one of our earlier videos. But the Detroit Lions weren't trying to open up a ton of money. Reportedly, they opened up $5 million in cap space, and you can see how that is the case here. If you notice, his cap hit for the 2023 season is now only $6.321 million. I believe originally the number was set at $11.32 million, which is exactly $5 million. So the Lions lowered his cap hit by $5 million, which opens up $5 million in cap space for this offseason, for right now, and for the draft, because you got to remember they need to have cap space for that as well. So with that being said, how do Lions do it? Like we always do, we move that base salary, man. So they moved the base salary down to $1.45 million. Originally, it was reported to be at $8.95 million, which is about $7.5 million difference. And you can see that exact number here. Restructure, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5. For like the last thing we looked at was void years, you just spread it out throughout the deal. So what the Detroit Lions did is they took $7.5 million of his base salary for the season, converted that into a signing bonus, which 7.5 divided by 3, because that's the years left on his deal, becomes $2.5 million. Also, a 2025 is a void year. So just like Cam Sutton, there is a void year, because if there wasn't, then this would be a higher number each year because of the fact that he's technically on a contract for 2 more years. He still is technically under contract to play for 2 more years, but just like Sutton, he has a void year as well. So you're spreading it out now to $2.5 million per season. And then again, 2025, it's a void year. It's $2.5 million. You're basically spending that unless you resign him or something, that it can go into the contract. So same thing there. Again, it's after 2024 when a lot of our contracts are up. So in that situation, you're going to have a lot of movement happening anyway, and you can try to find a way to make up that money at that time. Plus, I don't know what the salary cap's going to be set at in that year, but I'm assuming it's going to be pretty high. So that's all the Lions did, is lower his cap hit. There is less of an out now, because if the Lions, say for example, wanted to cut him, well, now you have these two, you have the void year plus the $2.5 million after this season. That would accelerate to $5 million, which would go to dead cap. So again, if you go back here, if you want to see it, you can find Tracy Walker right here. And now you can see that if you cut him, $7.5 million in dead cap, boom, heading into the 2024 season, you still would open up $5.3 million, but it's much less of an out than there originally was. So Lions restructure his contract, open up some cap space. Now, what we don't know is, or at least I don't know as of time of recording this, is Craig Reynolds' contract and Alex Anzalone's contract. We don't know the details on that. We know that it was reported that Alex Anzalone was getting a 3-year, $18.75 million deal. We don't know about Craig Reynolds to this point. That's still a weird one. I'm assuming it's not going to be a very big contract. I'm not sure. We were talking about, is he exclusive rights free agent? What is he here? You have to be on the roster for at least 6 games for it to count as a year. I don't know if he's actually done that. So everybody thought he was an exclusive rights free agent, but maybe he wasn't, because there's really no reason to give him an actual 1-year deal. If he is an exclusive rights free agent, you would just pick up the tender there if you brought him back for 1 year. And I don't really know. I just expect it's not going to be a ton there. Maybe he isn't, I guess. And then we also know that Isaiah Buggs, his cap hit, which I'm not even sure, I think they have it in here, was set at $1.6 million. So let's see if we can find it. Or $1.7 million. The Lions backloaded his 2-year deal a little bit, leaving a big out in 2024. So the Lions could cut him after this season with only $500K in dead cap. However, his cap number goes up to $2.8 million next year. So knowing those 3 contracts, according to Over the Cap, we have about $20 million in cap space, which is more than actually what we started with. The issue is we don't know Craig Reynolds' Brown's cap hit, and we don't know Alex Anzalone's cap hit, but I would anticipate Craig's going to be super low, and I don't know Alex's, but based on how the line set up a lot of contracts, at most you'd think it'd be $6 million. It's probably going to be much lower than that. And then finally, the Lions also announced a re-signing, and that is re-signing offensive lineman Matt Nelson. It's one we won't know the details to. It sounds like it's a one-year deal. Let's talk about Matt Nelson for a second. So Matt Nelson last year played 70 snaps for the Lions. He basically kind of became the sixth offensive lineman. That was his role. Week 6, he had a calf injury, which had him out until the Thanksgiving game. When he came back, he kind of mixed with Dan Skipper. He also played in the Lions field goal team as well. But what Matt Nelson became for us last season was that sixth offensive lineman. We had Dan Skipper doing it. I didn't think it went that well. I thought it was better with Matt Nelson, and I think Matt Nelson's had his most success in that role with the Detroit Lions. Nelson was a restricted free agent, so you had an opportunity to place a tender on him, but you didn't need to do that because no one was probably going to show that much interest. So with that being said, Matt Nelson, it sounds like he's back on a one-year deal. Now in 2021, we did see a lot of Matt Nelson. He played over 600 snaps, 603 snaps. He played at right tackle because that was the year Taylor Decker was injured. They moved Penei Sewell to left tackle. They moved Matt Nelson to right tackle. And it was a really rough combination because it wasn't that Matt Nelson was the worst tackle ever. It was a situation of you didn't have Taylor Decker, which is a big drop-off. It was a very big drop-off. So we really felt that. Alongside, at the same time, the receiver position was a disaster as well. There was a lot of disasters in that 2021 season. You know, Tyrell played like a 3 quarters and then he was done. It was a very big problem for us. So not only did we not have weapons, our offensive line was also taking a really big step back, and you pushed Sewell to left tackle, which we know now he is a right tackle for the Lions. So there was a lot going on. Wasn't a great year for Matt Nelson, and I still would like the Detroit Lions to address this position, but what this does do is he could come back and play a similar type of role. It also gives you insurance in terms of you are going to have at least some competition this offseason with him, and it seems like Obina Eze, who was the UDFA signing from this past season, who did not play this past year. And then also, the Lions still could address this position. I would like them to go try to get a swing backup tackle that's a little bit more proven in the league. But the Lions seem to like the development, I guess, of Matt Nelson, who was originally, we know, a defensive lineman that transitioned to the offensive tackle position out of Iowa. It gives Obina Eze some competition. Dan Skipper, as of now, who really struggled, especially when he had to kick into guard. Like, he did it for a game, and, you know, he held his own. Like, credit to him. No hate on Dan Skipper. He held his own. He did what best that he could. The guy's like 6'10" playing guard. It's just not going to work. However, he's still an unrestricted free agent. We have had no news about him being re-signed at this point. We have no news about Evan Brown at this point as well, and Big V's still on the roster. But with all that being said, the Lions still could go address tackle, whether that's draft or free agency. I would think I'd just kind of go after a backup swing tackle, but they seem to like Matt Nelson's development, and we know that he was at least pretty darn solid in that role of that sixth offensive lineman last year. I think he's been the best in that role for us. So with that being said, Matt Nelson is also back, but again, with Matt Nelson, we don't know the contract situation. I would assume it's super low cap hit, maybe just a one-year deal. We just don't know the details of that. So those 3 things that we don't know affect the fact that we don't know exactly what the Lions salary cap is going to be set at right now in terms of the $20 million. But I'm assuming it's not going to be super low. But again, you also have to keep in mind they have to be able to afford the draft class, which according to over the cap estimates is set at $14.3 million. That's the cap hits expected for 2023, and that's just the draft class. So you have to keep that in mind when you consider how much Lions actually having cap space to spend on free agency. And again, with a lot of these re-signings, I expect a lot of these guys are out there seeing what their value is on the market before having an opportunity to come back and re-sign with us. And I expect we're going to see more of these as free agency goes on, which is well over $10 million as of the draft picks that they have right now in terms of cap hits for this year and beyond. They need cap space. So Lions always trying to find a way to create flexibility. There could be a move coming. I don't really anticipate any huge moves coming for the Detroit Lions anytime soon here. I expect kind of what we've seen the last 2 years, and I'm perfectly cool with that. But that is the Lions cap update. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, Prop, for watching, and I'm out.